Good morning, friends, and welcome to New Garden Friends Meeting's digital worship. I'm Margaret Webb. I'm the pastor here at New Garden Friends Meeting. At New Garden Friends Meeting, one of the most important things that we do together is welcome one another. And the welcome that we extend to one another is a full, universal, warm welcome to everyone who comes through our doors. So we are not here together in person this morning, but still I want to extend that same welcome to all of you. You are welcome here in this space. The love of New Garden Friends Meeting surrounds and uplifts you. No matter who you are, no matter where you're from, you are welcome here among friends. Friends, I have a few announcements to share this morning. My first announcement is that I know that many of you are facing financial hardship, that this is a time when many businesses are experiencing financial hardship. And it's also a time when many faith communities are also experiencing financial difficulties. And I want to just remind you that if you do give to New Garden Friends Meeting or would like to give to New Garden Friends Meeting, we would joyfully receive your gift. You can mail it here to the meeting house. And the address for New Garden Friends Meeting is on the Facebook page as well as on our website. My second announcement is that I have heard from a number of you this past week that with ideas and interest in various ways that we can be together, connect digitally, both for fellowship and for worship time. And I just wanted to let all of you know that there is a wonderful group of staff and volunteers here at New Garden Friends Meeting that is working hard to figure out the best way for us to connect for worship, for religious education opportunities, for fellowship time. I know that we're all hungry to be together and to be connected in any way that we can be connected. And there is a group of people who are having those conversations about different platforms that we can use, about ways that we can see each other and hear each other and participate in worship together and fellowship and religious education. So those conversations are happening, and stay tuned in the next couple of weeks because we will continue to have ways that we can be in touch with each other. A great way to stay on top of what's happening in that area is to subscribe to our newsletter. If you do not already receive the New Garden Friends Meeting newsletter, you can receive it. You can receive it digitally or it can be mailed to you. You can contact the office here at New Garden Friends Meeting if you would like to be part of our newsletter. And all of the announcements about different kinds of worship and fellowship opportunities that are in the works, all of those announcements will come through our newsletter. Friends, this morning I am going to open our worship with two readings. The first is from 1 Kings, chapter 19, verses 11 through 13. He said, "Go out, Elijah, and stand on the mountain before God, for God is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks into pieces. And yet God was not in the wind. And after the wind there was a mighty earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake there was a great fire, but God was not in the fire. And then, after the fire, there was sheer silence. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And then from the silence, there came the voice of God. And God said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Our second reading this morning comes from Britain Yearly Meeting Faith and Practice. I'm reading section 2.16. This is a quote from Rufus Jones. "The early friends made the discovery that silence is one of the best preparations for communion with God. and for the reception of inspiration and guidance. Silence itself, of course, has no particular magic. It may be just sheer emptiness, absence of words or noise or music. It may be an occasion for slumber, or it may be a dead form. But silence may be an intensified pause, a vitalized hush, a creative quiet, an actual moment of mutual and reciprocal correspondence with God. Friends, this morning I am here with Marc Alley, our music director here at New Garden Friends meeting. He is going to lead us in song this morning.
Our song today is by Ken Medema. It's called Teach Me to Stop and Listen. Most of you are probably familiar with the tune, but I'm going to sing through it 2 times, so you can listen the first time and then join me and sing along the second time. Teach me to stop and listen. Teach me to center down. Teach me the use of silence. Teach me where peace is found. Teach me to hear your calling. Teach me to search your word. Teach me to hear in silence things I have never heard. Teach me to be collected. Teach me to be in tune. Teach me to be directed. Silence will end so soon. Then when it's time for moving, grant it that I may bring to every day and moment peace from a silent spring. Sing with me. Teach me to stop and listen. Teach me to center down. Teach me the use of silence. Teach me where peace is found. Teach me to hear your calling. Teach me to search your word. Teach me to hear in silence things I have never heard. Teach me to be collected. Teach me to be in tune. Teach me to be directed. Silence will end so soon. Then when it's time for moving, grant it that I may bring to every day and moment peace from a silent spring. I encourage all of you to sing this song at least once a day.
Friends, this is a small departure from how our worship typically runs when we are together in person. But this week, as I was holding our worship time in prayer and thinking about how we would be worshiping together this Sunday, I was thinking of all of the people in our community and in our country and in the world who need to be lifted up in prayer, who need to be held in the light right now. And I thought that we might have a moment together this morning where I would pray for all of you and for our country and for our world. And we could together hold in the light those who may need some extra light sent their way in these difficult times. So I would invite you to join me in holding our community, our world, our friends in the light. Please join me in prayer. Loving and gracious God, we walk through these days very uncertain about the future. We are not sure what tomorrow will look like, or next week, or next month, or 2 months from now, or 3 months from now. And God, our hearts are filled with worry for our loved ones, for our family members, especially for those who are considered essential in this moment, for those who continue to work, who are moving out in the world, who are caring for others. God, this morning we think especially about the truck drivers, the gas station attendants, the grocery store people who are keeping our shelves stocked and keeping our grocery stores open. We think about others who are moving in the community, for people who are delivering our groceries, for people who are cleaning homes, for people who are working in hospitals, in all different capacities, God. And this morning we think about those who work in retirement communities and nursing homes, who are caring for our beloved elders during this time. God, we want to surround all of these people with our love, with your light, God. May they feel uplifted by that love. May they be filled with courage, with the resilience to move forward into another day that is so uncertain. God, may you renew them in every way that you can. This morning, God, we also lift up into your light those who are grieving, those who are mourning the loss of a loved one, especially those who know that they cannot have a memorial service, cannot say goodbye to their loved ones in this moment. May your light surround and uplift all those who mourn and grieve. God, we are reminded of how great your love is and how great your faithfulness, that you are with us in every moment, even the moments that are difficult and painful and hard. Your goodness and your light shines on. It is in Jesus' holy name that I pray. Amen. Friends, thank you for joining me in prayer this morning. I so appreciate being with you all in community, as together we send light and love to all those who may need it. Friends, I don't know about you, but with my 2 children at home all of the time, and with Christopher and I working from home, my house is not particularly silent right now. But still, in these moments of so rigorous social distancing, I have found that my life has more time for silence, more time for solitude, more time than is typical in the busyness and rush of our everyday lives. I want to be clear here with all of you this morning. The global crisis that we are all facing together with COVID-19 is not a blessing. It is a tragedy that is claiming lives and creating huge financial strain and hardship. People are getting sick, and people are losing their jobs, and people are struggling to pay for food or to pay for rent. And people are risking their lives to keep our grocery stores stocked, to keep gas stations open, to care for the elderly, and of course to provide medical care for those who are sick. This is a painful and difficult moment for all of us, for our country, and for our world. But this is our reality right now. And for me, it is powerful when I cannot change a situation to try and seek the light within that situation that I cannot change. It helps me with my fears and my frustrations when I can see how the light is breaking into moments that are difficult and painful and hard. In the book The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, there is this exchange between Frodo and Gandalf. And I take Tolkien very seriously, which is why I'm sharing this with all of you this morning. "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf. "And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. We all have to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." For me, one of the lovely things about this time that has been given us is that it is offering up to many of us the ability to practice a sacred pause. Life is typically so full of activities and commitments that making time to pause and to be still and to listen for God can be next to impossible. But now that is less true for many of us, for those who are practicing quarantine or social distancing. Now is a time that offers us the opportunity to embrace solitude and silence, to embrace them and transform them into nurturing spiritual practices. This is part of our tradition as Quakers. We Quakers have a long tradition to turn to in these moments of solitude and silence. Quakers have historically centered our faith lives around that stillness, that seeking stillness, as we heard earlier in our reading from Rufus Jones. And it isn't just that Quakers sit quietly. It is that we allow the silence to open our hearts to those things that are bigger and beyond us. We practice attentiveness in the silence, and this transforms what can be lonely or painful into something that can be life-giving and rich. This is a practice that has taken me a long, long time to become good at as an extrovert. I am not naturally silent, and solitude is not my natural state. So living into this Quaker commitment to silence has taken practice for me. And indeed, in the last several weeks, even with this lifetime of practice, I have found myself struggling with the isolation that comes with social distancing. It has been a struggle for me. And because it has been a struggle, I have been seeking ways that which can be so difficult, how that can be so difficult could transform into something life-giving. In the passage from 1 Kings that I shared with you earlier this morning, we hear how God was not found in the noise, not in the storm, not in those things that are terrifying or mighty or grand. But instead, God was encountered in the sheer silence. The King James Version of verse 12 reads this way: "And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was a still, small voice." For those of us staying at home right now, we have the opportunity to take this time to be attentive to that still, small voice, to the sheer silence in which we can hear the movements of the universe and connect again with our own heartbeat. The living presence is with us in these times that we have been given. The living presence is beside us in these times of fear and with us in our uncertainty, always faithful to us. And we can connect to that power of love that is within us and around us, that surrounds us when we take time to listen for it. The invitation of this moment is that we slow ourselves down. As we struggle to find our way forward with working from home, which is a struggle, or doing school at home with our children, which can also be a struggle, as we find our regular commitments and responsibilities canceled, we can offer ourselves the grace to do everything at a slower pace. A pace that allows space for us to practice that sacred pause. This could look like taking time each day to settle into silence, to breathe deep, to listen to that love that is within us and around us, to center in that silence. But it could also look like doing a centering prayer or a meditation time with our children each day. It could look like taking a walk outside in nature. It could look like taking time to read something that nourishes our souls and then to spend time sitting quietly and thinking about what we have just read. It could be watching the sunlight and the birds outside our windows, or listening to music that lifts our hearts and takes us out of ourselves for a time. The silence and the solitude of this moment that many of us are experiencing can be painful and it can be difficult. But it can help if we find a way to make peace with that silence and to offer it to our hearts as a time to be attentive to ourselves and to the movements of God. Practicing that careful pause, holding space in the silence in our lives, can be difficult when our homes are chaotic or noisy. I know my home is not often completely silent. But sometimes within that chaos, those are the moments that we need it the most. That attentive pause, that moment of waiting and silence. And remember, the Quaker practice of waiting worship is not contingent on a completely silent environment. Our attentiveness to God in the silence is often practiced in moments that are not silent, that sometimes are noisy. Even here, when we are together in the peace of our meeting house, in our worship room together, we hear the noise from traffic on New Garden Road. We hear the rustling of bulletins. We hear the whir of the microphones or the sound of the lights. We hear the noise of children in worship and the noise of birds outside the windows. So if you are home with children or a spouse or pets or anything else that may make it hard for you to have complete quiet, remember that the Quaker practice of attentiveness, of holding space for that still small voice, it only requires the attentiveness of our hearts, of stilling our own minds and our own hearts. It's about finding our way back into our bodies, into that peace that surpasses all understanding, connecting again with our own heartbeat and with that place of the light that is within all of us. Plain Living, A Quaker Path to Simplicity, is a wonderful collection of quotes from all different Quakers. It is edited by Catherine Whitmere, and it's a wonderful resource not just about simplicity, but about many facets of Quaker faith and practice. As we approach our time of silent waiting worship together this morning, I would like to first share with all of you this quote from Carol Murphy. Carol Murphy wrote this: God is in the here and now. The great saying, I am that I am, can also be translated, I will be present where I will be present. And if we are to be ready for that presence, we must be able to listen. How else could we hear God if we are not capable of silence and listening? Friends, as we transition now into our time of silence this morning, I want to tell you all that I would be honored and delighted to hear of the ways that the Spirit is moving in your life in this time. If you feel so led after worship, you can send me an email and you can share something that came to you during the silence today. Or if you have another leading that you would like to share with me, I would love to hear it. I am, as always, available to all of you. Friends, as we enter into our time of silent waiting worship this morning, I would invite you to hold with me these queries, these questions. Has the still small voice whispered to you in the solitude of these last few weeks? What other blessings have come from the silence? Has your relationship with silence changed over this time of social distancing? Have you built intentional time for waiting worship into your life? Or other ways to be silent and centered, attentive to that stillness? What do these ways look like for you? How have you been seeking the presence, that living presence, into these moments?